Welcome to Dialogue to Destiny. This is Dak. This is our first episode. I have my boy Steve here with me. Today we're going to be discussing the issues of voting, especially with the emphasis on voting in the black community. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoy our conversation, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to Steve, let him introduce himself, and we'll go ahead and start from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steven, and this is my boy Dak. And what we're doing right here today is kind of giving you guys an open look to the type of conversations that Dak and I have had, outside of work, at work, growing up together, and spending time together working in the community. So we're opening that dialogue up and hoping that some of these situations can come to full fruition, become a destiny for us in our communities. And one of those ways we're going to approach today is through the vote.
All right, well, let's get this started. Steve, we have an election coming up here in about 3-4 days now. And I just know from some of the conversations that I have had with a bunch of, especially, I would say, the younger black community, there just seems to be a lot of reluctance in this sense that that voting is either not important, or it's either something that, hey, black people have been voting forever. Nothing has ever, come to fruition, or good things haven't come from our participation in voting. So I guess I want to start the dialogue by getting your opinion and how you feel, we can actually encourage these young black men and black women to get out there and participate more in this right that we have.
Well, I think a lot of that's going to come with them knowing the history of the vote. And not just from the civil rights movement, but back to the end of slavery. Soon after slavery had ended, during the Reconstruction period, there were over 270 people of color that were in offices. This brought rise to the Ku Klux Klan and them removing, I would say, the desire for us to vote because it became too much trouble. During that time of voting, what seemed or appeared to be too much trouble was us developing community, us having jobs, us being able to serve one another and have a quality of life, which is why it was suppressed. I see the young men nowadays willingly refusing to participate in the changes that they could be a part of within their community through the vote. Being a willing participant and active participant within your community. It's going to start with voting. The importance of voting is bringing people into office that have that same desire to improve and grow the community. That's going to take knowing who you are lifting up into position in your neighborhood. Get to know the candidates. Get to know the needs of your neighborhood. Vote those people in.
Well, you brought up that word suppression, man. And, actually I had somebody, one of my Facebook friends, put a post on Facebook today, and they were saying something about people that suppress votes should be removed from the country. And my response back to that person was, well, what about self-suppression? You know what I'm saying? Like you were just
Amen.
mentioning, I think that the black vote and voters have committed self-suppression more than any system could have tried to create for them. I mean, one thing I've learned, Steve, whether it was playing sports or anything else, is that your opponent is always going to try to put you at a disadvantage. Would you agree with that? I mean, well, in anything in life. So it's the job of your opponents to do whatever they can to keep you from voting. But when you actually are willing to help them and self-suppress your vote, to me that's worse. I mean, because I was thinking, okay, if the black population in America is 13% of the population, and we have 330 million people in this country, that would mean that the black population in this country is probably around 45 million people. Okay, so if we have 45 million people, and if we just say, okay, if you think about the part of the population that's under 18, or the part of the population that have other obstacles that prevent them from voting, if you just deduct them, and we'll say cut it in half. Say you got 22.5 million black people in this country that are eligible to vote, but they choose to not go out and vote because of that 22.5 million, Steve. The average election, black people turn out maybe 40-50% of the eligible voters actually get out to vote. So we're leaving 15-20 million people, or at least say 10 to 15 million people on the sideline waiting to not participating in something. So you think about it like that, man. Imagine if we would have had those people out in the 60s, the 50s, the 70s, the Voting Rights Act wasn't signed until the 60s, but if these last 5 decades, imagine how much further we as a people could be in this country. I mean, you got a city like Ferguson, Missouri, and I never knew this. I never had heard of Ferguson until Michael Brown, but you got a city like that has a black population 70-80%. Mm-hmm. But they didn't have one black person in any position of authority or power in that city. It's because the people there just, they didn't participate. So, you can't sit back and expect to bring about or see the change that you want. But when it's time to make your voices heard, you're sitting on the sideline.
I agree with that. I think it's more self-suppression than anything else. And I think some of it's because we haven't seen desired results. To try to put this into a visual, you have people running a race in the Olympics. Everybody there is lined up to win the race, right? But you have one person that hasn't participated in practice, hasn't participated in the working out, the stretching, and all the calisthenics that come with wanting to win the race. And they come in last. And they continue to come in last. They're not addressing the need to exercise. And that's the same thing with the vote. If we choose not to exercise, we will continue to come in last. If we choose not to participate in the activities that will make us stronger, make us better, put us at the front of the line or the front of the race instead of the end of the race, we will always continue to lose mm-hmm. until we start using our collective power to make the changes that we need to move forward, to build the communities that we want. See, right now, we've been left with other people showing up at the table, deciding what it is that we'll have in our community, and usually it doesn't fit the need for the community, and then the project is way too small for the community that is at hand. Mm-hmm. So why should we continue to let somebody else make our plate, create our community, decide what our environment's going to be about? Or our communities are going to be about. We're going to have to take a vested interest and be active in there. See, right now we're playing the blame game, and as long as we keep blaming folks, we're not assuming responsibility. Well, see, once I get mad at myself, then I've accepted responsibility. But if I continue to be mad at you after decade after decade after decade mm-hmm. and have done nothing different.
Well, I mean, I agree with you 100%, but I also do feel that historically, there have been a lot of obstacles in our way. There have been things that have taken away our desire to participate because, we have always had this thing where it just does. It seems like you take 2 steps forward, the system knocks you back 3 steps. So it is hard to continue to believe in a system that has failed you so long. But I do also understand that if we want to see the changes take place, because sometimes I almost get the sense that some people wait for bad things to happen. You know, there's a certain segment, certain part of our population that you know, we sit back, we don't participate, but we're first in line to participate in the conflict. You see what I'm saying?
I agree.
I mean, see, you know, participating in voting could be a conflict. It could help to avoid the conflict of having the wrong people in office. I mean, you know, because I mean, I've thought about these kind of things for a long time, man, and I do. There's sometimes, as much as I love, you know, my people, and I want to see things move forward for us. I want to see us come together as a community. And I'm not speaking necessarily on just the black community. I'm talking all communities. I want America to be a country that's welcoming and inclusive of everyone. But you know, the thing that I'm talking about, man, is we have this, and you mentioned it a little bit. You're talking about this blame game, you know, and sometimes I kind of feel that we spend so much time looking for a villain. We need somebody that's going to carry that mantle of making us look bad. Because the thing is if we ever get to a point where those obstacles are no longer there, then our merits have to take over. You know, and I think some people they don't want that. You know, they're gonna spend their whole existence here in this country thinking that they're supposed to finish last. You know, when you believe that you're supposed to finish last, you know, I mean, I don't know how to reach people like that.
Well, if you don't participate, you're guaranteed to always be last.
Well, you are, but there's so many people, Steve, that feel like I mean, they have this sense of hopelessness, man, when it comes to voting and participating. Because, like I said, I mean, when we trust the government, you know, they use us as test guinea pigs for syphilis. You know, when we trust the government, they do this. But I look at even locally here in Minneapolis, man, we got a county attorney that was pretty much going to let the cops that killed George Floyd walk.
Right.
But because this state elected Freeman, but because this state elected an attorney general for the state that understood
what was about to happen.
Yeah, the ramifications of that. You know, we're looking at more harsh terms, harsh, you know, penalties. You know, but I don't know. I mean, it's a hard thing to grasp, man. Why so many people have this apathetic view of voting.
I can only speak to what it is that I think that some of the issues might be. One of the issues that I think is running rampant, and I'm going to step out on a limb with this here, within our communities and within our churches, we've become reactive. See, protest is a reaction. Politics is proactivity.
Yeah,
that's agree. Getting in front of your problem. See, we're reacting in these situations these last several months. We are reacting to what's been put, to the plates that have been made for us, to the things that have been set upon us, to things that others have, put into our communities. If we are proactive and start putting the things that we need in our community, and we carve out a spot at the table and maintain that spot at the table, now we're in the proactive portion of what's going on. To draw clear pictures, Lord forgive me, churches have been showing up when there's white chalk outlines, mylar balloons, bottles of Hennessy, and teddy bears on the side of the road after a young man gets shot. Reactive. Proactive would be having ministries when he's a young man to keep him engaged. It's the same thought process with our communities and our politics. We can't be mad because they've decided to do this when we've willingly have not showed up at the table. And if you're not at the table, folks, they're going to have your behind on the menu. and we are getting eaten alive. Let's get at the table. Let's start planning our agenda. And let's start getting the right people in place that also believe in our agenda and can help us move this thing forward. Because the politicians and the Supreme Court judges are not going, or our president are not going to make this better. Because what I learned growing up, and which it seems like it's vacant nowadays, is we, the people, form the better and more perfect union. We do. And we're going to have to do that collectively and politically and be proactive about it.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up religion, man, when it comes to this voting thing, because I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. I kind of feel like the church is a hindrance to participation. Now, I understand they got souls to the polls, and I understand all of that, Steve. But a lot of times people, I mean, a lot of the people that I've talked to in my journey and just my experience, man, a lot of them that have this reluctance to participating in voting, they have a strong spiritual connection. You see what I'm saying? I mean, so, you know, because I do. I mean, I look back, I'm from North Minneapolis, born and raised, you know, we both are. You know, and I look back, man, and I've always, anytime I turned on the TV, man, you know, you always, like you said, you always had these preachers showing up anytime something bad happened in the community, anytime there was a place, at least from my perspective, a place or a time for them to get their face on camera, they're always there, you know, and they're always, you know, they're calling for peace. Sometimes it's not a time for, I mean, some people believe there's always a time for peace, but I'm not one of those people that necessarily believe that everything that we deal with as a community can be done by singing Kumbaya and walking around saying, hey, you know, I sometimes I think that you know, you have to bring fire with fire. You got to fight fire with fire. And so for me, it's like, I agree that the church has its place, man. But I also know from my experience that a lot of people that I talk to, they use God as a reason in the Bible as a reason to not participate, because they believe that they're not of this world. You know, so how do you convince people, these young people, man, that are tied into their church very strongly, they have very strong spiritual thoughts, but that will come to someone like me and say, hey, nothing that really matters in this world matters to me. Nothing that happens in this world matters to me, is what I meant to say. You know, because I find myself in a constant struggle even with that, you know, with the religious aspect, spiritual aspect of their opposition to voting.
To address that, you know, try to walk it back. Actually, the word administration
Yeah.
or administer and clerical, they come from ministry and from clergy. That's where they start from, because those were your record keepers. Most churches keep an active role of voting aging people, and they always ask the question every year, at least the church that I attend, are you an active voter? So they still got their fingers on the pulse. And when we look at getting the equal voting rights and stuff back out, led by the churches. Yeah, it was led by the churches.
When I turn on TV,
and anybody who you said uses the Bible to not vote, that lets me know one thing for 100% sure. That person reads the Bible. Another thing that lets me know 100% for sure, they don't study the Bible, because they should never walk away with that impression.
Well, but let me ask you this, though, Steve. How is it that depending on the denomination of the church, how is it that I turn on the TV and I see these evangelical preachers on there talking about how Donald Trump is almost like the second coming of Christ? You know, how he was chosen by God at this place and at this time in American history to lead this country. I mean, and then, you know, so do you think that might be causing some conflict in a lot of people that have connections to the church when it comes to their vote? Because you have preachers out there. I mean, I'll put it this way: the highest percentage of black people that vote Republican are tied to their spiritual beliefs, and their spiritual beliefs, which I think is shallow because there's so many other things the Bible addresses that the Republican Party is 100%, opposed to. But they are driven by their spiritual beliefs. I'm anti-gay marriage, or I'm anti-abortion. So how is it that the majority of black people that are out here voting Republican are tied to the Christian faith?
Could you
No, I mean, because I mean, if you,
I want to answer it, but
can I elaborate on it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay,
Please
well, what I'm saying, Steve, is I hear. I mean, okay, put it this way: a lot of the black people that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with, like the ones that are, he had a panel of they're all ministers. A lot of the people that I mean, I saw this. I don't know if it was like a breakfast or something he had with all these black clergy, but they were sitting there, talking about how Donald Trump has done more for the black community than any other president in history, and this and that. And I can't help but believe that it's because of the direction that their church is pushing them that's causing them to have this distorted view of reality, man. I mean, now, like I said, I understand there are some churches, some denominations that because I've always heard there was a separation of church and state in this country, but I'm turning on the TV on Sunday morning and I hear Paula White, I hear all these, Creflo Dollar, I hear them talking about telling their parishioners to go out and vote the Bible. And I'm curious as to what vote the Bible means to a Christian.
I guess that would be on any individual. I mean, myself, I know who I voted for, but I'm not into choosing who you should vote for. Well, I just think it's a process that you should participate in. Of course, I would love in a perfect world to say, yeah, you vote the way I vote. Well, my thing with the evangelicals that you speak of, I'm not even a religious person. I call myself a spiritual person.
I understand.
And I want to walk in that spirit and in that truth. And I want to sit down and take the time. See, I think some people are more worried.
But you don't think they use their platform to get out the word, on how to vote? People do have the right to vote their conscience and in their best interest. I'm not saying that somebody has to vote according, because what I see, the way that I see the world is different than the way someone in another part of the country, maybe another race, another gender, or whatever. They may see the world. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I understand that people, we have multiple parties in this country for a reason. People have different experiences in their life that should drive how they view the direction of this country and the way that they want the country to run. But I just feel like churches either, for some reason, I feel like a lot of churches either almost encourage non-participation, not necessarily churches, but even people that just study the Bible outside the church. They encourage non-participation, or if you are going to participate, they strongly encourage you vote a certain way. And are you saying that you've never seen that?
I'll put it like this: I only attend one church.
But Steve, are you living in a bubble of your church? I mean, are you?
Well, if you're active, usually you are. So when you go into your meetings and whatnot. If you
because I'm telling you, man, I watch. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've been active in one church, but I watch church on TV all the time. And I read things in CNN. I watch the news stations, and I see these evangelical preachers up there, like almost telling people, if you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're destined to go to hell. And that's what I'm trying to say is
I can't say that I haven't seen something like that, and I don't really want to get into grading what they should or shouldn't be doing, because there's more that we ourselves could be doing where I serve at. But I know that that's one of the things that is, spoken often. Get out, vote, exercise your right to vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote, but you need to be out there participating.
All right, well that's good.
And you know, we serve in a very diverse community.
We do.
So when we went out, it was just to encourage. We cleaned up the neighborhood and encouraged people vote. We didn't wear blue. We didn't wear red. We didn't support Biden. We didn't support Trump. We put neither one of those people down. We just went out into the neighborhood, cleaned up, passed out backpacks, man, encouraged them to participate, not only in the education or participate in the academics and education of their children, but to participate in what they need here, not just on the level of the country as far as the presidency, but get more engaged with your local government, what we're doing right here within the state, within the 12th, whatever's going on right here. Put your finger on the pulse so you have a better idea of, number one, what your community looks like, what your community needs, and then start fostering ministries and or outreach that meets those needs for those people in that community.
No, I feel you, man.
See, and that's part of what's going on. People are sitting at home and they're not getting enough information to make a healthy decision. Now, when I see somebody that goes in there and I just run down all the Republicans or I'll run down all the Democrats, I know that person hasn't taken the time and have given this process enough respect where who's doing what within my community, most of all to the community center down the street, the park down the street, the grocery store down the street, the clinic that's there. Does that clinic have all it needs to support the health needs of this community? See, when you're voting, you got to think about all that stuff, man. You got to think about the widow. You got to think about the orphan.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Got to bring this stuff in here.
Okay.
And when we get done with this, I'd like to ask you about a friend of yours.
All right, but let me feed off of what you just said. You know, because you said some people go in and they just go straight Democrat or straight Republican and they didn't research their candidates. I think history researches it for us, because I'm going to explain something to you, Steve, that, you know, if you look at every policy, with the exception of the freeing of the slaves, okay, 150 something years ago, if you look at every policy in this country that has benefited either poor, marginalized communities, they have all come from one party. There has not been one policy that anyone has been able to come up with to rebut this. Yeah, Richard Nixon, he came up with the EPA, okay? You know, he did do something for the environment. But there has not been one policy in you and mine and we're both in our 50s, in either one of our lifetime that has benefited black people or poor white people or middle class people, period. Okay, that anyone can come up with that will make any sense. Now, yeah, they'll throw you a little trinket and say, hey, we'll give you a short-term temporary tax cut. Yours is going to be temporary till the end of this year. But the rich people, we're going to make sure. So for me, you know, I just think that you know, because that's what I do. I vote straight Democrat, and I'm not going to sit and say that I even consider the other side, because the other side has shown me through their policy, through their action, through their words. When I'm turning on TV and I hear of another Republican politician having to apologize for wearing a Klan outfit or having to apologize for one thing or another, they've shown me in every way possible that they are hostile to my advancement, to my motion and moving forward. So how could they possibly earn my vote?
Well, R or D doesn't determine the heart, because I'm sure there's a great number of Democrats that are racist too.
Well, we both know that.
You know, being for the simple fact, you know, that was not the party of black folks back in the days. Back in the days, and just the name of it, the Democratic Farmer and Labor, they was getting free labor. So you know they didn't want slavery to
Well,
ever end.
I think that labor was them being conscious and fighting for the rights of labor of workers. You know, I don't know that it comes from. I don't know that labor portion comes from
farmer,
huh?
Democratic farmer.
Yeah. So they looked out for the interest of farmers.
Okay.
So
what
farmers,
did the farmers
and labor,
have?
huh?
Because remember, the Republicans freed the slaves, right?
But
so that means
Steve,
there was a Democratic Party,
I know,
right?
but
and it was full of farmers and laborers,
well,
right?
they were the Dixiecrats back then.
And then they had free labor, right?
They did.
And that was the compromise that pulled the rug from under their feet.
Yeah, no, and I understand what you're saying, Steve, but the reality is over the last 150 years, there's been a complete transformation of both parties. Because if you don't even have to go back 150 years. If you look at Ronald Reagan when he was elected in 1980, and now it's 2020, 40 years. Ronald Reagan would not be welcome in the Republican Party today. I mean, even Bob Dole would not be welcome in today's Republican Party because it's more like the
They're
Trump
too close
party.
to the middle.
Who is Reagan and Dole?
They're
of course,
too close
of course.
to the
I
middle.
mean, Donald Trump is actually taking the Republican Party off the spectrum. He's not even on the gauge anymore. He's telling people it's okay if you hate Muslims. It's okay if you hate this race of person. It's okay if you hate gay people. It's okay if you're a woman and or if you're a man and you want to just go grab a woman or do something to violate that woman. It's okay.
No,
and
it's
these people,
not okay.
huh?
I said no.
Well, he's
it's
telling the
not
world it's okay though.
But here's my thing, man. I think politics is one monster with two heads, and I think one side, doesn't even consider certain people, and the other side ain't very concerned.
Well, I see him as the wicked witch of the South and the witch of the North. See, that's how I see it. They're not the same. They're not attached. They're separate. They might have the same name, or same. They both are witches.
Two heads.
But one is good and one is evil. I mean that's how I see that. I don't see. Because to say that they're two heads of the same dragon means that they share the same heart. And I don't believe that in any way does the Republican Party share the same heart as the Democrats.
I'm thinking I'm not looking at it as Democrat and Republican. I'm looking at it as politician, and I don't think there's any of those politicians, especially when you look at these people that are sitting in the House of Representatives and whatnot, that have sat there, 30, 40, 50, 60 years and haven't really done anything. So the question I wanted to ask you about your friend was Sean Combs.
Mm-hmm.
And him talking about putting another political party together.
Yeah.
For me, just to speak on that vein, and just trying to make some more topics and stuff, because I don't want to beat the church up, because me, I'll defend it.
And I'll defend it up to a certain point myself.
I'm going to defend the church. But Mr. Combs is talking about adding another political party. Once again, let's go back to the numbers that you used, 13 to 15% of the population. Now, if we took every last one of them 45, 50,000 or 50 million people and put a party together, what type of real strength would we have? Because what it sounds like what he wants to do is something that we've done before with the NAACP and with the Urban League. Gathering people together for political, on a political agenda, like-mindedness, getting the things that we need for our community. And I think should I use the word revamp or restore some of those things and hold their feet to the fire? Now, you have an NAACP that has a budget this year of $25 million, I believe it is. That's enough to start getting some messaging out.
So you're saying that he should be funneling his energy through the NAACP, or do you?
Well, I don't say that he has to, but we have. I put it like this: NAACP has been around for 111 years.
And we know what that's
and we're still having that same problem.
You know why?
We're still having that same problem.
Because they've had weak leadership, Steve.
Okay, do you think, well, what is strong leadership, and why aren't we putting it into places that are there already? See, we're trying to recreate the wheel to do something that's already here, that's not doing what it's supposed to do. Now, do we fuel, restore, repair, reactivate what it is, and hold the people that are in power, hold their feet to the fire? Or do we look into this puffy thing that sounds like it's going to be more of the same? And I think it's not who's got the new thing, who's going to have a new way of thinking, who's going to have a new way of approaching it. Well, the need has exists now, and hopefully won't exist as big or as weighty in the future, that we can kind of taper it down, whittle it down some. But we can come up with this wonderful ideal, and we've had many of them. Are we going to take care of this? Are we going to tool it right? Are we going to use it correctly? And are we going to invest in it?
Well, see, personally, you know, when it comes to the idea, I like what P. Diddy is talking about a lot more than I like some of the other alternatives, whether it was Ice Cube or whether it's now we got Lil Wayne out there talking. See, what I like about what P. Diddy is saying is he's not talking about what he's talking about, and it is similar to what the NAACP has pushed and the kind of platform and the kind of structure that they built. But the difference between, I think, what P. Diddy's talking about versus them is P. Diddy is talking about making hard demands of these politicians and actually holding them accountable. I mean, see, because to me, it goes back to the whole church thing. You know, the NAACP historically have been tied to churches, and I look at it like this. You mentioned that they've been around 111 years, right? 111 years, Steve, and black people in this country are still finishing last. Okay, I'm always willing to listen to someone that has a plan that at least gives us a chance to have a seat at the table. So I look at P. Diddy's plan as like this. I think that what he wants to do is he wants to build a coalition. I know he's using the term party, but I think what he wants to do is build a coalition and have candidates have to listen and respect our demands. And if they don't respect our demands, they will be held accountable. They won't have our support. See, because, you know, I've always wondered, like, why is it that other groups of people, subgroups of Americans, are able to get their agenda through? You know, and I'm not picking on any group, but I'm going to bring this up. You know, I look at like the LGBTQ community, okay? Now, over the last 8 years, I would say that community has been able to get a lot of their agenda passed and pushed through, okay? Whereas black people have not. But I also look at the fact that, hey, you know what? If you look at voting percentages, they're showing up 80, 90%. Whereas we show up 40%.
If that.
Because what happens is, you know, I keep hearing people talk about, well, you know, the black female drives the Democratic Party. Or the black, you know, the black people as a whole, what we do is we show up and we vote 90% for Democrats, and they don't give us anything. That's why we need to stop voting for them. But I look at it going back to the numbers I had given you before. If only half of us are showing up, you got to cut that 90% in half too. You see what I'm saying? Because those people that half that don't show up, they're part of the black community. Now, so if you're going to say 90% of black people vote Democrat, but only half of the black people vote, you got to say 45% of the black people in this country vote Democrat, right? Democratic. So it can't be both ways where we don't want to participate the way we need to participate, but we want to have demands that are going to be heard. If we want demands to be heard, we have to encourage our kids. We have to encourage our cousins. Everybody has to get out and participate. Once we do that, once we get to a point of participation that other communities are at, Steve, then we can start making those demands and holding politicians accountable. You know, if you want if you want our vote, yeah, we'll put Biden in here this time. But Biden, in 2 years, we're going to be looking at what you're doing. And if in those 2 years, maybe you're going to lose one of your branches. You're going to either lose the House or the Senate because we're not going to support you. You're obviously not listening to our demands. And if you're not right in 4 years, you won't be back there in 4 years. I mean, we have to make those demands, but we have to put somebody in office that's at least sympathetic to our issues, man. I mean, I've been using the analogy with a lot of people lately that, you know, that say you're sitting at home one day and two different politicians show up. You know, one comes in the house and says, hey, you know, give me a list of 10 things that you want me to address, you know, if I win the office. And the next person comes in and they ask you the same thing. I need a list of 10 things. The next day they come back. The one politician says, hey, you know, on your list, there's really nothing that I can help you with. You know, if maybe one thing I might be able to get through for you. The other politician comes in and says, hey, there's 7 or 8 things that I know that I can work for. Now, the other 2, I can't guarantee you. See, when what I feel our community is falling into is this trap of all or nothing. You know, we want all 10 issues of our issues resolved, or we're not going to support you. You know, instead of saying, hey, let's work with the man that's going to give us 7 or 8 and try to push him on the other 2 or 3. We don't have this idea, you know, and that's what I think has kept us stuck, man. I mean, we've been, you know, there's absolutely no reason that in 2020 our community should still be sitting around talking about, you know, policies that are hurting us. I mean, if we would have been voting all along, we would have had people in position already that would have dealt with police brutality. They would have dealt with a lot of these things. I mean, imagine if 20 years ago people were voting and they had mayors and they had chief of police, they had all these people in all these cities around the country. They would have gotten rid of a lot of the issues that we're dealing with today.
But I think some of that comes from our youth. They see the president all the time. They hear about what the president is doing. So they look at that. And yeah, be interested in that. Find out what's going on the world stage. But you're more impactful on a local level. You're going to see changes more immediate. You'll be able to see and take advantage of these opportunities sooner. Those changes come sooner within your community. In an example, one of the proudest moment that you and I spent together, man, was the day we talked about the vote with the young men that gathered with us. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where this stems from, too, being with the young men. To my knowledge, none of those young men had voted in a local election. None of them. And I think maybe 1 or 2 in the presidential election. The men that were in that room that day went and voted on the local election. Now, I think every one of them in the room voted on the local election. That made me feel good because this is the generation that's going to use this platform and use these tools. If they continue to do it, what we speak about right now, our dialogue, will be their destiny. That their kids will be politically active and they will create a community. And then them kids will stand on, these young men are standing on our shoulders. Their kids will stand on theirs. We will reach heights if we continue to invest in ourselves, in our community, and choose to vote. Because like you said about the 10 lists is what I was saying at the very beginning. Find out who has a heart and a mind for your community, and get behind those people. Get them into office. And you know what? When they get into office, they can't be there by themselves. They need a support team. And that's where you can also be a part of that change. Not just vocally, but being actively a participant in that change. And that's where we miss out too. We come up with some great ideas, but nobody's willing to put the sweat equity into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I agree with everything you just said. I do, and I'm just hoping that somehow, some way, we can get past this election, and I mean, we all have our choice as to who we'd like to see win and lead this country into the future, But at this point, I'm just asking everybody to get out, vote, make your voice heard, because you don't have a seat at the table. You don't have any voices sitting there in the boardroom or in the Oval Office looking out for your best interest if you don't vote. So if you can do that, I think that we have a bright future in this country, and especially in our community. Steve, do you have anything you want to close with, man? Or?
I would just tell these people, get up, get to the table, make your plate. Make your plate. Don't let nobody decide your direction, your altitude, or where you should be, or what the size of your community should be. Live up to your potentials. Living up to your potential puts you well within the grasp of your dreams.
All right, man. Well, that sounds good. All right. Well, just to let you guys know, we also do a monthly forum where we get the community together. We talk about different issues. We've talked about things, whether it's community investment, mentorship. We've talked about bridging the racial gap and having open dialogue between the different races and groups of people so that we can get past these barriers that keep us apart. We've talked about a few different issues. Now, we do have another one of our presentations coming up on November 14th. That'll be from 11:30 to 2 Central Time. And so if you're in the Minneapolis area and you'd like to join, we would love to have you. The address that it's going to be at is 3900 Thomas Avenue North, and that's in Minneapolis. But if you're
the Zoom link?
Yeah, and we do have we do have a way for you to join via Zoom as well. And if you want to do that, if that's an option for you, we'd love to have you listen in and participate that way as well. The Zoom dial-in information is as follows. We have 715-310-7421, and the password to join is 0208. Now, we do have an email address set up already, and if you want to offer some feedback, give us some ideas for future conversations. I mean, Steve and I, we do. I think today's conversation was pretty tame. But we do go at it quite a bit. We have a lot of agreeances, but there's a lot of things we don't agree on. But at the end of the day, we care about each other. We want the same things for the community. But our email address, in case you want to contact us that way, is capital S and capital D outside. So S and D outside is with a capital S and a capital D at gmail.com. So that's going to do it for today's podcast. But like I said, touch base with us. Follow us, through via email, or join us at our next forum on November 14th. Again, that's 11:30 to 12 Central. Thank you.
Yep, and just one little PS on here, just a little add something else. Please let us know, what do you want to talk about? What's on your heart? What's on your mind? What's going on in your community? Let's chop it up.